Hey guys, welcome to Crowfall Live. I am Jonathan Pollard. I'm a game designer here at Artcraft Entertainment.
And I'm a principal technical engineer, or designer, or whatever you want to call me. I'm doing the code behind all this stuff. We're behind a lot of it.
Yeah,
at least.
So yeah, he actually shortened his title by about 10 different words. He's actually like assistant executive principal engineer of awesomeness, Thomas Eidson. All right. So the general goal that we wanted to do on this live stream is basically, while taking some questions, which every now and then I will check to make sure you guys haven't asked us some things, or maybe perhaps Jack will interject some questions for us, is to take you from, we're assuming you don't know anything about how our world systems work, and go from a parcel to a parcel with anchors, diorama anchors, to looking at some dioramas themselves, and then possibly moving on from there into kind of the new things that we've been working on as a strike team here at Artcraft for probably basically since the beginning of the year or so, just a little bit afterwards, the new year. That strike team is composed of myself, Thomas, Brandon Robertson, John O'Neill, with a huge amount of assistance from Rudy, and also Aaron, and all kinds of artists. Todd likes to have his army of artists, as I'm sure you guys are aware. So what we're looking at here is just the basics of a new farm parcel that we're doing. This is a one cell area. And cells are basically how our terrains are divided up between the different our different terrains are broken up into areas that can then be stitched or kind of re-glued into other parcels to make up the general land masses. Now, before, and what you've seen up to a certain point, is that we have one general world that you log into. Abattoir was the latest PvP zone. Morning was the latest, and soon you'll be seeing... what was the one that we called for 562? I guess it was Morning, right?
Bereaved. We have Bereaved. We have... Was it Bereaved?
We do have Bereavement.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, but so you guys will be seeing the results essentially in 562 of our some of the new randomization systems that we've put into place here, that Thomas has been hard at work at, and Todd and everybody's been kind of designing and guiding along the way. So this is a one cell. Each of these little cubes here kind of represents a different cell. We don't necessarily use each one in any given construction scene to make one, but I wanted to just kind of give you guys some effect. So now I've cleared up the surrounding cells. So this would essentially be like a 2x2 parcel. It has a certain amount of things. So basically everything kind of gets split up into two different methods of getting into the game. We've kind of got some static meshes, which is mostly what is placed into a parcel. Those objects, like if you ever come in, some of these rocks, decorative rocks, the terrain itself, obviously like the foliage, grass cards, some of the bushes, those are all static. They're kind of built into the landmass of the parcel itself. And then you're going to have other objects that are slightly dynamic. And while most parcels are mostly made up of these static objects, we can put in dynamically spawned in objects, such as these trees, and other things like our nodes for gold, perhaps, silver, any of our marble stones, and things along those lines, granite. So, when we get to this point, what we're then able to do is go inside and kind of like export this particular segment of the world. So in this case, this one cell right here, this new farm parcel, we'd be able to export. Now, in order to support some of these dynamic objects that aren't directly placed into this parcel, we have a system known as dioramas. And what those dioramas are going to do is allow us to dynamically spawn in any number of other kind of like little mini scenes into these parcels. And that's kind of what helps create sort of like our changing world and create diversity among the already existing parcels. Now, Rudy and John and Aaron have been hard at work making all of these brand new land masses. You're going to see probably, I'd say we've at least doubled, if not gotten near to triple, the amount of different land masses that we can bring into the world. And in order to kind of, what that helps us do is offer more diversity throughout the landscapes that you guys are getting to see. And we've kind of started to define what we view as our first biome, which is the highlands. So basically all of the terrain and environments that you've seen up to this point are going to kind of move into that first biome that we're calling the highlands. And other biomes to come at some point, undisclosed at this point, or at least that I'm not able to share. But I'm going to show you a little bit more advanced. So this is a different parcel. It's the Farm 04, which you guys have probably run into. Manly Emo, hat and doors. Oh yeah, I think they're upset that you're not talking. It's just because he's afraid that you guys aren't going to like his stuff. But I assure you,
there's a lot for me to show. We're just not at that point yet. We're getting close to it.
Right. Yeah.
I'm saving my energy.
Pretty much the back half of this, you guys are going to hear probably way more than you'd even want to know from Thomas on all of these systems.
I've been working on this for 5 months now, so there's a lot of work that I put into this.
So if you look at this landmass now, you can see that it's that basic kind of parcel. We've got some trees built into the parcel itself. We've got some what we call the very basic resources. We used to call them like trash resources. I'm not supposed to say that on live stream though. So I definitely did not call them trash resources on the live stream. But each of these discs, they used to be purple in some of our past. And kind of the color coding result here, you'll notice that there's actually like two main colors. The green here on this big disc, and then a white disc. I mean, this white kind of arrow pointing thing. You can see that the way the nose is pointing here. Actually, this kind of looks like Todd's little dragon drawing. It's just more blocky. Like if we did like an LOD of Todd's dragon statue, it'd probably look pretty close to this. But the way the nose is facing is to a north, and as we're dropping this in, what we know is that these have been placed pretty meticulously by some of the design team, mostly by the environment team at this point. That's kind of a switch over from the new pipeline that we've established. And what you'll anytime that this circle exists, we know that basically we can fill it with any number of the diorama scenes that we've created. That's things like some of like our battle encampments. They can be houses. They can be a spawner of mobs with kind of a nest inside of them, and then it also dynamically spawns in some of the NPCs for it. And basically, any number of these can be randomized to any of the diorama scenes that we've created. But what we found is that when we were going through that process, if we went into more of the procedural world generation, which it doesn't just mean like the terrain land masses. Of course, that's a big part of it. But we're more looking at this point, how did you create dynamic content, dynamic points of interest for you guys to explore and do new things with, so that we're kind of drawing you more and more out into the wildlands, or more and more into like a more functional and interactive city, or other interest points, POIs, such as like we have our new adventure zone, the canyons, and we're going to continue to make more interesting what we call like A tier, A rank, which is more of like an internal dev thing than like a player facing. It's just a category of how nice this is. On one end, we have basically total filler systems, which still have dioramas get placed into them. And on the other side, we have very dynamic, kind of eye-catching places for you to see. Eagle Talon Point was one of those early on. It's where there's kind of two hills on side, and the land masses kind of come up into a couple of like talon looking points. in that area, we could spawn with data layers and dioramas, different mobs and themes for that particular parcel. And if that parcel appears in more than one point, which we try not to put too many of the same one in a given world, we can theme it differently based on those data layers, such as one could have zombies in it, one could have spiders.
Why don't you open up the canyon real quick?
I have a question for you while you're doing that.
Sure.
How much can you vary the diorama's rank from the parcel's rank? If there's a rank 4 parcel, can it have rank 2 and rank 6 resource dioramas?
No.
So, I mean, from a technical standpoint, we could basically do that.
Yeah.
It would move more into kind of our dynamic spawner system, which right now we always do kind of tiers for that, ranks 1 through 10 for everything. So that no matter what rank that the actual parcel and campaign data eventually feeds in to that diorama, they know what they should spawn as. But we could do gaps so that if you did perhaps like a level, any parcel levels are ranked 1 through 4 could spawn the same thing if we wanted it to. And so we kind of manipulate it in that way if we want. But we actually have, so far, we basically just defined everything all the way through all 10 ranks. Everything has kind of like a distinct ranking system for it.
Okay, before we show off the data layer stuff, let's go ahead and show off some of the functionality of an anchor.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and bring up the anchor tool, and we'll just bring that off to the side here. And then select, say, a spawn node, or that's an MVC node, isn't it?
Sorry, like a harvest node?
Yeah, just grab a harvest node. Let's go for a 16, they're a little bit more interesting.
Yeah.
We have sizes of different types of, that's 32.
32.
That's fine.
We just got to find the middle one now.
Yeah. It's kind of hard to find them because there's not much room in this map.
Yeah, the canyons themselves are kind of
one on the corner.
hard to spawn out. So a lot of our spawns are much lower.
So this tool right here allows the artists to come in and quickly place these things down. And then you can see they have associated certain resources with this node. And then we can use the mouse wheel to preview this, and then they can rotate it and see how well things fit within the map, and is it thunking down properly? Is there something clipping into it? And that's how they get all these different nodes in the world, and they spend quite a bit of time going through that. You can see. Was that a cheat? Was that like a...
There was a hunger node there, and I don't know if we're supposed to show that off or not yet.
I think we could show them the hunger.
So I kind of like scrolled past it as fast as I could. Like, oh yeah, there's something new that they're not supposed to see. Yeah. So
we've got new
I don't think they're going to be mad about it, but hopefully they won't be. But
we got a
this is one of the new.
Right now, she'd be yelling at us if it was illegal.
It's true.
If it was illegal,
it's illegal. Yeah, but you can see the variety of stuff that we can have in these nodes, and then not each one of these nodes is going to spawn something either. The randomization system could totally skip over this, so each canyon will have a different, slightly, be totally different actually.
Yeah. So this anchor tool itself is actually one of the new tools that Eidson was coming in. I think he actually made the first prototype of it like a week after he'd been here.
Yeah, I had this version, or a really good version, working pretty quickly.
Yeah, and it's one of the things that John, Rudy, Aaron, and the rest of the world team have been kind of wanting to have, and that's so that we can more quickly kind of create the variations of these dynamic worlds that we're trying to create. Yeah. Before, it was a pretty tedious process of going in, and we'd have a diorama anchor, and then I'd go in and I'd manually assign an anchor that they'd want to check out. They'd be like, "Hey, show me what like the gold mega node is going to look like on this anchor if we place it here." And then I'd go through a 10-minute process of booting up the system, running a server, getting into the game, getting my character over to that point, and seeing what it looked like. And by being able to do this with the live previews, which I mean you can't tell, but as I'm over this window, I'm just scrolling my mouse wheel now. And it's dynamically thunking all of these objects to where they're actually going to be when it arrives in game, and it's sped up the workflow for our world building process tenfold, probably.
Yeah, the artists were like just, oh my gosh, how did you do this?
Gold mega node. Dino Rage. I don't want to like try to explain something if you actually know what it is. Hunger crystals. They'll get into that. I'm sure they'll do like a whole live stream or something along the lines of the effects of the hunger. So we're not going to dive too much into it. Coolster. Sorry about that. Gold mega nodes is just basically what we call like a group node. You're going to have a party of people to go and harvest it with, since it's an ore, your picks.
Yeah, Blazin 85. I randomized the canyon to be extremely dense. It just depends on what we do for each of these adventure zones. I'm currently coding what's called a theme system, or I will be within the next week, which will allow us to make the adventure zones much more, be a lot more dense with resources, as well as NPCs, and theming it out for the specific NPCs, like only spiders in a spider canyon. Let's go ahead and close this tool out and bring up the parcel tool.
Sure. Real quick before I do that, what you'll notice is I wanted to point out a lot of the old, if you see here on the preview area, all of our old discs were just straight purple. And that's because we only had one common type of anchor. And what we can do now is we can assign properties or essentially like presets to these anchors so that only certain kinds of dioramas are in. And that goes to kind of like our data backend, tags and descriptors and feature sets that we've applied to any given diorama. And so when we select, for instance, here, we've got a drop down of all of the different ones. DAS stands for a very contrived, at this point, diorama anchor active slottable preset. And what that means is the active slottable preset is the types of dioramas that can actually fit onto this diorama. And so you can see we've got one that will take everything. We've got different buildings. It'll take a bunch of campfires here, various goodie chests. By the way, we are sprinkling random treasure chests throughout the world now. Every parcel, almost every parcel has at least one treasure chest hidden inside of it. It is not guaranteed to be spawned just because it has an anchor there for it. But you're going to be able to go around and explore and find like rare resources or just some valuable equipment. I think we're kind of still strategizing exactly what we're going to put into them, but we're trying to bring in more and more things that are going to encourage explorers and offer exploration gameplay to you guys, just like kind of going out and hanging and maybe not doing as much of the battling as you are. And we think it's really going to be helpful for those gatherers and stuff too, because they're just going to get some bonuses in there from those things. Some of them do NPCs. Some of them are outposts or siege mechanics. We got temples, and all of this eventually feeds directly into a system where we can create more dynamic worlds with kind of like the press of a button. It's ironic. Our job is essentially to eliminate our job at this point so that it gets automated by a computer.
Bugs. Yeah. Always be bugs to fix, but
yeah, we'll make sure there are. Yeah. Loot boxes be banned in the Netherlands. I mean, you're not paying for them, right? Like the problem with loot boxes is that you're going to pay $15, $20 for something, and you only have a certain chance.
I think that was a troll.
Is it? Mandalorus is better? Are you trolling us? No, that's unfortunate. Yes. I thought that everyone was
Let's go ahead and close down the anchor tool and bring up the
By anchor tool. All right.
He said ignore me, he means it.
Control-Shift-T. And right now, the data layers that are displayed as everything. So let's look at the middle of the map. Or look at it. Or like try to see a good canyon here. So you can see everything's turned on right now. And then we have a lot of switches that we can throw for this stuff.
Yeah, so you'll probably, if you're familiar with any of the morning map from the latest builds that we had pushed out to live for you guys to test for us, you've probably run across the two adventure zones that we have 3 adventure zones, but we have 2 adventure zones that are set in this kind of canyon play set, which I don't know if you've noticed, but they are in fact split up into various kinds of basic like Tetris pieces of sort. Here in the top left, we've got kind of like an entrance. We've got like a little canyon, which is where you'll find the main POIs, like the the quarry or the mining area, depending on which of the POIs you went into. This big cave can be a boss room. We also used to use it as our shrine, our resurrect shrine, so that you can change vessels. And we don't use it anymore. We've got some new things, switchbacks. And all this stuff is kind of dynamically controlled by what Thomas wants to get into, which is these data layer systems. So right now we have everything kind of toggled on. I'm going to turn them off for the moment.
And it turns off the roof. It turns off the spiders, webs, and other themes that we have here.
Right. So, for instance, if we wanted to, we can make a series of these areas. You'll see mostly here at the entrance, and then over here to the top left of the viewport here. That's the kind of cave area. And if we turn it back off, you'll notice that some of the top coverings go away. And these are things we can kind of define into when we start to generate those worlds, like, hey, generate this canyon, but with a cave system kind of implemented into it. Or we can generate a canyon that has various spider spawns built into it. Now that I've activated the spider data layer, you can kind of see that now there's spider nests weaved throughout. They made an abandoned kind of like miner village that had been attacked at one point. Which one did I turn on? Human boss mine, village chests.
And you need to turn on mine itself.
And mine itself.
Human mine.
So now we've got a series of different data layers. And each of those can be turned on individually. They can all be turned on at the same time. You'll see that there's kind of some wreckage from some buildings, from a rock collapse here. We've now got like an entrance instead of a dead end that you guys can teleport up with through some ladders. Make your way up to the top. Oh, no. You gotta turn around. There we go. And various other architecture. So this is just another one of the kind of building blocks going into it. Is there other things you'd kind of like to show them feature here, Thomas?
We could open up a canyon real quick here in the tool. Just
to show them the actual
data. There's a lot of data going on here.
Let's find the cave. That's the room area. So this is going to be the room parcel, which if I can see over here on the edge, it's going to be this area a little bit. So in here you can see various numbers of the data layers that we have. And inside of it, we've got a series of objects. So all of these objects themselves exist in the scene, but when we export this particular parcel set out, it separates each of these different cells into its own parcel. It separates each of the data layers into their own data layers for activation for each parcel. So while we have one scene, what we end up with is the ability to have probably a combination of somewhere around like 64 different sets of terrain, information, and themes, all kind of mix and matchable to create more and more dynamic worlds just from a smaller environment play set.
Go ahead and collapse down the data layers. There. Oh, we can. There are a bunch of settings that I've put in here for being able to do these combinations, but we can go down to the parcel shape.
Okay. Parcel shape.
This allows us to define how large a parcel is, and just simply by clicking buttons here, it will group those parcels together and spit them out into the various files we need them in. There's some tech that we have not shown off. I don't even know if we should talk about it, but the next one are the parcel height offsets. Is basically saying we can cause a parcel in the world to be raised up or lowered down so we can get more interesting features in the world. We're not using this tech yet, but it's fully functional to be able to make what we call the donut system, where we surround an area and then we have the inner section raised or lowered much higher than the rest of the world. It gives a really neat sort of play area, or we could put an arena up there, or above or below, or whatever we want to do with it.
Yeah, so I'm actually going to just go ahead and open up one of those small donut areas. And the thought here, go ahead.
This is the old donut. It doesn't have John's slopes going up, but I'm not sure which one we had that in on.
It's probably the VO2.
VO2, yeah, makes sense. And then in conjunction with this, if you open up the parcel height offsets, you'll notice that now it's been flagged to raise this intersection up by 50 meters, and then we could put a fort or something on top of it for y'all to assault or defend. That's some of the tech we've been looking at doing.
Yeah, more than likely this stuff's going to come to you guys in some form in the EK. Yeah. We're still working out the strategy. That is not a promise, and it's certainly not a release date.
Yeah, we don't have any definite plans for getting this tech in yet, but we have it available to us.
It's there. We're definitely going to be using it to some respects inside the campaign worlds themselves, and who knows, depending on kind of the results of the tests and how those initial trials go for these donuts, who knows what we use it for. But it's really cool tech, and if you could just kind of imagine, in the same way that like, oh, we put a diorama anchor down here, well, now you can put like a donut down and then maybe put like a citadel, or a citadel's too big, but like a little village up here or a castle of some sort, and it should be cool. Of note, it can also lower the terrain if we wanted to create valleys or something along those lines. It doesn't have to always go up.
And we have donuts that are larger than this. So you can have donuts inside of donuts inside of donuts, which allows all sorts of possibilities for making something really high, or some kind of mountainous terrain and having a keep on top of it. It'd be pretty neat. Yeah. This is the big donut, the really big donut. It doesn't have slopes yet, but the tech all works for being able to nest in donuts inside of each other.
We did a lot of concept testing for this stuff, and so while we're not exactly sure what the particular endpoint will be for the use of these, or do we need like half of this donut to be going up and then they have to be going down, just kind of working that out dynamically.
Yeah, and some of these parcels you can make any shape. Of course, they don't have to be rectangular. You could have this set up here where it's 2 8s and one's lowered and one's raised over here. You can do all sorts of really combinations with it.
Right. Yeah. So in that instance here, not caps lock, you could actually see we could just cut out like a little bit of this terrain if we wanted to, and the system would work just fine having this sort of inner middle shape for you guys to play with.
Yeah, so we could have a mountain on the side there and come on into a valley or something around it. I made a city that was lowered down, went down, and came back up to a hill inside of it. So it was pretty neat.
Yeah, let's see. Infinite Donuts. Yes, there are Infinite Donuts. Also try Round Rock Donuts. They're a local Austin favorite. Donuts were part of the one button push. Well, the donuts were part of the one button push random world generator. Almost assuredly, at some point they will be. They certainly are already compatible. We just have to figure out what the strategy is for them. And Todd's obviously cranking away right now.
Hopefully, we'll be able to get to that stuff today. We're really going long here. It's already been 30 minutes. We're halfway through the
Yeah, sorry. Stream. They told us it had to go an hour, and we're like, we're going to really stretch that out. I was going to bring up the shot spinner at some point, but that's probably not going to happen.
I still have that saved.
Nice, dude. Yeah, okay. It'll happen in some. We'll update it. But
if we go back to the canyon here in a sec,
you'll see some road parcel stuff. Just
yeah.
You'll definitely see that.
We're going to show off
canyons.
I want to show off a little bit more about the canyons real quick. Actually, bring up the roads. Bring up the roads right now.
Okay. Ask and you shall receive, Crowfall fans.
Don't tell them that.
No?
Okay, don't tell them that.
Ask and we'll think about giving you what you wanted.
There you go.
How many times have I said no to a tool?
Pretty much never.
I've never said no.
Yeah, everything gets automated.
I do all the tools. I mean, seriously, I've been filling up the left-hand side of the keyboard in Unity with shortcuts for all the tools I've been writing. So here's the roads. We're going to bring up the partial tool again. And we're going to go for the L shape. The L shape. We've got an L shape here in the bottom left corner. And in the tool, we have what's called cell connections. And when you click on the 4 here is where it's located at. And the L has defined a road parcel connection. And then it can have any combination of parcels around it. And we have these different settings of, and then did this for, if you notice the edges came online. This system takes care of edges as well. It's sharing the same code. So you could have an edge that says, I want any parcel here, but on the other side of me, it must be empty parcels. So that edge knows it could be placed there. And the same thing goes for the L. It knows, hey, I need to have, and we're actually looking at the scene upside down because the Z is pointing down. There we go. Z pointing up means, hey, at the bottom of this L, which is rotated, I want that to be a road. And at the left side of the L, I want that to be connected. And that allows us to do a combination of all these different guys dynamically at runtime. Or not runtime, but at runtime when I'm running it.
Yeah, so essentially Thomas is creating sort of, it's not exactly an AI, but a smart system that when we feed it enough of the data and parameters, it's able to go ahead and build out long stretches of road from one POI to another POI, or a town to a POI, town to town, and those kind of adjustments for it. We have any level of access to this for our E-case for unique looking homes. Unfortunately, I don't really understand the context of that. Be able to craft road parcels in game. Don't know. That's Todd question. You'll have to ask him now.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything about crafting. Yeah, we'll have to ask Todd.
Is there a reason you've not added graveyards to the adventure zones? It would seem logical to put high-level graveyards with the Risen in their canyon. That's a good suggestion. We will take it into consideration, and more than likely, though, if we'd probably want to create a very specific, but that's a good point. A much larger graveyard kind of area or POI would kind of support that. The canyons were made more specifically to support the theme of come here and get a bunch of high-level stone, come here and get a bunch of the construction stone, or come here and get a bunch of the construction ore or high-level ore. And so if we wanted to do something for like graveyards or trees, you'll see that there's a tree adventure zone at this point, a forest adventure zone. We may want to come up with like something that's more directly themed towards that kind of graveyard. But you're right. With the zombies, maybe they would kind of make sense. We'll definitely take into consideration and kind of give you some feedback there.
I think we got rid of the fog, actually. No, I'm just messing with you. Do we have parcels that apply debuffs or buffs? Yes, we do. Actually, they're not parcel side. It's more diorama side. So it's much more dynamic.
No.
You could have a parcel with or without it, basically.
Let's see. So we got those systems. Did you want to go back to the canyons, or I could bring up the forest parcels?
No, I think we're pretty much done with that.
Yeah.
We do have another tool. If you press Alt-Control-E, this gives us information about polys and how many objects, and just so we can kind of like evaluate how heavy a parcel is and try to keep it its performance from getting out, just getting too crazy. Some of them haven't been populated with all their data, but there's quite a bit of data here to take a look at and make sure, hey, we're not going crazy with it.
This is the beginnings of a tool that, as kind of mentioned before, we wanted to kind of have like a grade system for how cool, like, is it a filler parcel? Is it more of like an adventure zone? Is it something in between? And by doing that, it also kind of gives us this natural path for, okay, well, the cooler ones are obviously going to have more objects in them. So it's going to be a bigger hit on performance. It's going to take longer. Do we actually want to fill something up that's going to take that looks amazing and beautiful, and it's got all kinds of props and objects all around it? And also, we want to have 100 people fight in this area all at the same time. Maybe that's not the greatest idea. And what this tool allows us to do is have a much better idea of the combinations of a given area.
You're saying the phrase "much better" a lot.
Am I? Nice. Well, I will try to be much better about that moving forward. Yeah.
I guess we'll go over to the developer mode. No, not developer mode. It's the zone builder.
Zone builder.
Let's go to zone builder. Y'all are gonna recognize some of this.
So we used to call this the EK tool, and for about a month that you guys were probably totally unaware of, we called it the island builder, because we're going to be moving into more of a, here's multiple main land masses that you can transfer in between for each world, basically on the fly through our rune gate system. And now it is called the zone builder. Ignore the EK tool scene name. It is called zone builder. No
Zone
arguing.
builder.
No arguing about it. I guess you guys can argue if you want.
It would never argue with us.
Right. Like, what else would we call it?
You can bring up Abattoir real quick.
Abattoir is our PvP map, and this is the 5.6 version of it. And you can tell that this parcel is a crypt because it really looks like crypts, right?
Yeah,
It's like
it's such good artwork for that.
it's hard to tell. I mean, it's really getting the message across, I feel, nowadays, right? Crypt parcel. Yeah.
So you can tell some of this has been randomized and some of it hasn't been randomized. The center has a lot of different icons on it for all the different resources.
Yeah, so these little markers you can kind of tell are the same, like, Christmassy. They're not all Christmassy. They can be any color. We just happen to put green as the harvest nodes and reds are NPCs, and we put a lot of harvest nodes and NPCs throughout the world.
When we first made this, Todd said I want to use the randomization tool on it, so I randomized it, and there were NPCs all over it, which he didn't want. So I had to come up for Jonathan a system to where he can randomize only specific things, and make sure that other cells and parcels are not randomized. So you'll notice the whole outer edge is not randomized. So here's our randomization tool.
Okay, so this is directly what Thomas here was talking about. And so what this does is we've been giving a series of kind of data definitions for any of the dioramas that we have. We briefly touched on that a little bit earlier. And when we do these data definitions, what it allows us to do in this tool is kind of keep track of how many. Like, if you go find a mega node diorama somewhere out in the world, it's probably going to have 1 or 2 mega nodes in it. So we would count each of those mega node golds as a feature, or if it just had some of the regular gold nodes, we would count each one of those. And so a diorama could be made up of multiple of these features. And by using this tool, we're able to set a number of each of these features to be populated into a general landmass, one of our islands. And it's been a huge help, and it's directly leading into kind of where we're going with the rest of the system. I guess you maybe want to explain the weights here to them.
Yeah, so the feature system for each one of our dioramas keeps track of. We have a spreadsheet of what is in it. Say a diorama has 5 yew trees in it. When that diorama is randomized into the world, it will take up 5 of these weights that we have here. So once it gets up to a limit, it stops placing those objects in the world. And that allows us to keep, the randomization system from not overloading the world with too many objects, and also gives us a way to control, do we want more yew trees? Do we want more gold? What kind of ratios do we want? At this point in time, those numbers are just randomly chosen. We haven't done any analysis on that, so don't expect us to have some kind of balance based off of this. It's just a test for the system.
Right, and just to further short circuit the complaints of like, oh man, you're gonna put 103rd copper in there and then 190 oak and there's only 8 elven graves. This is just like the test default settings for it. There are a whole bunch of other ones we're actually using when we go through to create. Also, this doesn't have to be entirely applied to the whole system. We can go through and select just like a region of parcels to randomize, and then only randomize that little section. in the earlier parts, before all of this had kind of like finally come together, a lot of our adventure zones were kind of populated in this selecting a region sort of methodology. And what that allowed us to do is basically populate everything but the adventure zones out using one main kind of configuration here, randomization configuration. And then we were able to select just the adventure zones and give them their own very specific loadout for the different amount of features that we wanted to have inside them.
Anyway, so go ahead and close this window out.
Yeah, it's just a bunch of numbers.
Yeah.
The only other main thing to kind of like see there is that we've got them kind of tiered, solo, mega, and boss. Depending on the type of feature, let's say a gold node. Again, we're going right. I really like that gold. Maybe I should pick a different one. A copper node. A solo is going to be one of the regular ones, and a mega is going to be one of the group necessary giant nodes that you can harvest. There isn't a boss one for it, for example. But then if we use like houses, you could have like a small cottage, and it would fit into kind of the solo. Mega would be a little bit bigger house, and really that's kind of more free-form naming, solo, mega, and boss. It just kind of made sense at the time when we were developing the system.
I just made that up.
Yeah, they're essentially just tiers. Yeah. And we can use the tiers to mean whatever we want. NPCs themselves, it can be grunts, elites, and bosses. And that's kind of where the naming came from.
Go ahead and click on the randomized selected. There you go. As you can just see, now it's got NPCs and all sorts of neat stuff in there. When this is saved out, it will, that side of the map will have those random nodes. It's really fast.
Yeah. Let's do a little bit bigger one. I'm not sure. I guess we haven't really shown them Arinth. I guess we could show them a little bit. But this is the old map from, I guess what you guys, well, it's going to be like really new to you guys, but old to us because we're basically working one cycle ahead of what's coming out to live. That the live stuff's basically in our polish phase at this point.
And you can see that there's a large amount of nodes here that are not randomized. So if we were to press the button again, you'd totally get a different world.
Yeah. So just kind of give you an idea here, we can actually hide the empty ones.
Yeah.
So all the icons that are still up now, those are the ones that have actually been randomized and assigned a diorama based on all of our presets and calculations. And now that we've got it, we can do randomize all. And this takes a little bit. So here's a message from King Doggett for everyone, since Doggett seems to be a big fan of everyone himself, because you are in fact a fan of him. It's kind of like a cyclical situation.
They want to see bereavement.
Bereavement. Okay, yeah, we can show you bereavement. Anyway, so that randomized. I promise you there's no like behind the scenes trickery there underneath the Doggett message. Or if there was, we really pulled it off, right?
Good.
Yeah, great. Let's see. Is this the tentacly one? Okay.
This is basically morning again.
Yeah, so this bereavement is morning.
Yeah, but I had chopped off some of the stuff in here, and then we later put it back in. It's supposed to be intended for some zoning stuff eventually, but we're not going to even do that. So I don't think we're going to use this map.
But what it did provide us was a way to kind of, as more and more of Thomas's randomization system came online, we're able to do it. Like these mountains are being kind of generated in some of our other worlds at this point. I suppose we can move into Arinth. Just kind of like a quick overview. What you're going to notice is that these beachhead sections that are kind of off to the side, those are going to get moved to their own zones. We're working on a brand new beachhead
mainland
area as well. Here's what one of them looks like at the moment. Yeah. Runegate, Crypt, little adventure zone for the newbie areas, and then this is just the old beachhead area. But we're working on a whole new modular system for the beachhead. Stay tuned.
Artists are working hard on that stuff. This world was randomly generated with the new generation system.
Yeah, so we haven't had much time to talk about that, but essentially we can, instead of having to place these parcels randomly as well now, Thomas has been working on a system so that it will essentially be picking out of a deck of cards that we said. We say like, hey, you get 5 farm cards in this one. You're going to get 12 mountain systems in this one, or you get, sorry, not 12. That'd be like way too many, but let's say you get 4 mountain systems. In those mountain systems, you can have this many straights, this many turns, this many dead ends. And same thing kind of for the road system. And just to kind of give an example here, we can actually generate... You want to generate some?
Yeah.
How do you think that's going to go?
See how well it works.
Yeah.
How many bugs are we going to see today?
Some bugs, but it's still pretty cool.
You can't click it twice. That is a bug.
No, I dragged off before I
good,
actually let it go.
good.
It should be okay. Yeah.
All right, it's trying to do
Should be
stuff.
okay.
Uh-oh. I left my pink cubes in there.
Sorry, those some pink debug cubes. And so this is all definitely following some logic here as far as like the placement. That's why you're not getting POIs that are literally sitting right next to each other.
Oh, they can sit next to each other.
Or
I had a whole chain of them generate yesterday.
but it's gonna space out, and we'll be able to add more and more logic
Click it again.
into where we want some of these.
This is what I
things
do all
to
day.
go.
Is I just click that button, so I can test out all my changes. The roads themselves that are generating are supposed to have some space and like meander a little bit. They're not supposed to be straight. See how it's meandering there on the right? Oh wow, we got one that went around the entire map. It's like I can't get around these mountains.
Tennis, you will not be able to get to the other zones beachhead, or the other factions beachheads. It's all protected. And if you did, you would immediately
That is a
die
really cool
because we
map.
still have the death zone. Yeah, this one actually came out pretty good.
Yeah. So a couple issues that I don't like with it, but yeah, it came out pretty good. I mean, it's connecting into T intersections, and it's going between the town and the village.
Yeah.
And it actually has a POI right next door, or
There's
two
a
of
little
them.
forest POI here.
3.
And it's
There's
got
3
a
there.
canyon here.
Yeah, that
Oh, and
village.
another canyon, man.
Yeah, you take that village out, and
Yeah, pretty good. There's
Use
another
that for
POI
going
over
off and-
here.
get all your resources and crafting in the village there.
These mountains all generated by themselves and connected.
Yeah, these mountains don't exist in the game currently. The large H there does, but the smaller ones don't. And the reason why I requested smaller mountains is because they weren't fitting into the randomization as well as I would have liked. So John O'Neill just came up with these nice 3x3s instead of 4x4s. They're smaller, but we're going to be using the large mountains and the small mountains. A lot of times, the large mountains don't randomize in now.
So it's just kind of so you guys have a better idea of basically the workflow we're trying to get to. We want to hit 2 buttons when we get in here. If we're setting up all of our data and all of our strategies and all of our decks, and the world builders are getting all of their anchors set in the right places, the themes are there, all of our towns and strongholds are kind of getting populated the way we want them to. We're going to hit 2 buttons. We're going to come in here. We're going to hit the Create Random Island button. I think I dragged off of it. Yeah. Create Random Island button. And once that island generates, we're going to come down here and we're going to hit this Randomize All button. And it's going to populate out the dioramas for us. And we're going to have a brand new world for you guys.
Yeah, so there's a few things here as part of this pipeline. The shape itself is chosen at random, and it took me a long time to get that data down for being able to make sure the shape doesn't like squeeze up against the edges too much. You can see it on the top there; it was a little bit squeezed against the edge, but that's okay. You know, you still get the idea of the shape. I wanted to have really good peninsulas for some combat opportunities there. For being able to have chokeholds and all that stuff. And then after that, it comes in, it tries to place the primary points of interest. And then I'm working on that right now. So that village and the town being next to each other, that is a no-no. I don't want that. I want to be able to spread those out by at least 8 cells. And we talked about that on the forums. I'm working on that today. The roads just started being able to be connected. just this week. And then I worked on the making it not go down straight lines and all that stuff yesterday. Actually got some pretty interesting looking mountains there. It's too bad the 3x3 mountains don't have any dioramas on them because they're right up against the edges. There's no space. So I'm thinking that's why you see a lot of bare area there, like for that U shape.
And we're looking at strategies for how to kind of use that, or maybe kind of edit the mountains, or maybe come up with a mountain that fits into the L pattern that then also allows for some gameplay nodes or areas to be kind of placed into it.
I've been wanting to have someone put a data layer on a mountain to where we could have a castle hanging off the edge or something like that. Have like a cool tower, like just at the top, fight your way to it, sort of thing.
Are you?
I am Hand Shadow.
Yeah.
Yes.
Tenants, the land branching. We're okay with some tendrily looking things, right? The Arinth mainland, the main one that we're going to be going with here for the 5.7, which this isn't totally set. We're going to do some edits. You'll notice that there aren't any roads in it at the moment. It actually is pretty spindly, and
that's all my cubes.
We don't mind it so much. I guess because I hadn't let it finish generating before on that.
No, that's fine.
But we could probably drop into this zone here. So we'll kind of like go into this new map. You guys can get like a little bit of a preview for it. A lot of this is tying to our new weather systems, day-night systems. It's all coming down the pipeline to kind of just, like I said, we want to come in and we want to push those two buttons. It's possible we may even combine those two buttons into one button. Whoa. At some point, which is Todd's main dream.
There's
right?
3 buttons there. There's save.
All right,
when you click save, it puts the edges on the world as well. So there's a little bit more going on in the background,
and that's all happening dynamically, kind of like what Thomas was talking about. If you've got, oh no,
don't go.
Oh
Blizzard.
Well, you guys will see that I have a Blizzard launcher coming up. Hopefully, it'll just go away. There he goes. If you've got like a section. Yeah, you can tell they spared no expenses on my art tools here, and it's gonna know when it kind of creates this edge, with this green square here being the edge, that it's gonna kind of look in these directions. It's gonna say, okay, I've got one to my left, one to the upper left, one to the upper right, and one to the right, and then it's gonna put in a very specific U shape for generating those edges, right?
And actually, that the way the math works behind it, I'm not sure if I want to bore y'all with this, but I will anyway. There's eight locations for you to look at, right? Basically, that you don't look at the center, except to know, hey, this is an empty spot, which gives the data the ability to just be built off of one byte. So you can store that data very efficiently for a lookup table to be able to place all these parcels for the edges real quickly.
Right.
So it's not in EKs yet. We're gonna be bringing that online sometime, probably maybe next month.
Right. Basically, it's an evaluation system, right? If it's got one where each of these green stars is, it puts in a different one. If it's got one where each of these green stars is, it puts in a different one. Same here. We had
John make 16 different types of edges. Actually, he probably did some variants. I don't have the variant system in yet, but the specific edge pieces are all being put in.
So this is going to take a little bit to Overwatch. Yeah! Well, hopefully you guys didn't see my screen name, and if you did, give me a follow.
Hit that follow button. Go ahead and share.
Yeah, be sure to subscribe.
And you got to hit the bell to make sure that you get notifications. I hate that.
Well, you don't want to miss any updates.
Right,
really.
Obviously.
What are we winning by using EK? I mean, after playing Adventure, finally, it is better for now to stay on this world and bring back some resources to EK. At what point will we better go to the EK to take on some objects, resources better than the adventure areas? Got it. That's a really great Blair question.
Yeah, I'd say that's something for Blair, Todd.
I hit the wrong one. Sorry, guys. Hey, shoot us some questions while we're waiting for this map to kind of load in here. And we won't like
4 minutes, man.
cut
We're
off.
Make it.
We don't have to cut off immediately at 12, right? We're not
Well,
like
I mean,
a
I'm
deadline.
literally shutting off all the power in this room at 12.
Oh,
so...
is it just gonna go immediately
there's a
black
render
right
box
at
that
12?
just- it all
Okay,
goes
guys,
down.
we don't know if we're gonna make it. We're just gonna drop into the world here, take some questions, and we'll kind of like gradually go off.
Yeah, Gradishar. That's what the canyons are for right now. We want to have other things that break up the world. You'll notice that there are voids in the world. So there's areas where it'll just generate an edge of the world, and you have to walk around it to get to the other side. So there's some more continent breakers there. Why the gaping holes in the middle of the maps? That's just the way it generates it. It's trying to generate a world with peninsulas, but it can have them loop back around themselves. So you'll have a void there, and that's what I was just saying. It's a good continent breaker.
Yeah, I mean, so if you think of our edges as more of kind of just breaking points in an island, like if it was an island on an ocean, you wouldn't have one just completely solid landmass. You're gonna have little pockets where there would be water, especially along the edges. Like if we were going back to kind of like the more spindly looking land masses that were forming here in some of the generations. And just having kind of like a gaping hole that you can fall through and die seems pretty cool to me. And generally, now that we have the edge system, and it doesn't just look like you're peering through to endless space anymore, it works out, essentially.
For the edges themselves, as far as bits go, it's whether a parcel exists at a location or not. So, true or false. That's basically what each one of those bits does. And there's only 8 of them, so it fits into a byte.
Are there any plans to fill the voids with water lakes? I mean, essentially right now the plan is to fill them with the same fog that you see at the edges. And when I say plan, it's already doing that. It's just that we've yet to have an example of these kind of holes in the map. You know, if we get to it, I mean, I'm sure Todd and Blair and Gordon, they're all going to evaluate these things, and especially the art team. I mean, if the art team is going to look at it, and if they think it doesn't look good, they're going to pull it. They're going to tell us not to do that anymore. But at the moment, from the internal testing we've seen, it looks pretty cool, and it actually creates a couple of places where like we've been able to separate a POI and a town or like a village or village fort area with one of those land masses where normally they would be too close to each other, but because you've got to go around this giant like hole in the landmass, it actually is fun because the travel time is essentially the distance that we'd like to see. We don't have lizard men yet. No. We are actively working on more and more NPCs. You're going to be seeing about double the variety of NPCs in this next one. Maybe double isn't right. Yeah, there's a good amount. It's just because we didn't have too many NPCs to hit regardless before, and now we've got about double.
I have not knocked anybody into the voids yet, but I really am looking forward to doing that. There are some areas where the voids come to a point, and it's very easy to, or not all that easy, but you will have combat in those choke points. So it's possible. I've been noticing that shader issue lately.
Which one?
The blue sky off of that.
Oh, off the water reflections
Yeah,
there. I mean, it's just the general water. I don't think we're supposed to have it anymore. You've probably noticed we've slowly taken water out of the games because we're working on brand new shaders.
Did you randomize this
for that? Yeah, it should be randomized. Should be. I think.
You shouldn't have done that. It's gonna take forever.
Yeah, it'll take forever to load. Well, we're not gonna let that load yet. We're still working on optimizing that. Yeah, there's some over here. It's randomized. I guess we just didn't get too many in this particular area.
Or a little failure. You try to teleport to a zone. Doesn't exist. Try 256. Or 200 or something like that.
Nope, looks like the teleport's just broken.
Yeah, there's a mega node.
Just keep running there.
What in the world?
Somewhere Blair's having a heart attack. Was he having a heart attack about? Did someone say episode 8 was a good movie?
No, don't even get them started.
We can get
Mark
into
is
that.
in there.
Yeah, we have your guys just rubberbanding.
Yeah, I guess we lost connection. Well, we don't want to just see that over and over again. All right, well, we're just going to take questions, guys.
Well, you guys are over time anyway, so you can grab a couple of questions.
Yeah,
let's just do a couple more questions.
Ignore anything they say about
maybe
The Last Jedi.
About The Last Jedi? Okay.
Ignore it, all of it.
I do have a task on my plate to put a theme into a randomization. We kind of talked about that earlier with the canyons. You can currently theme it with data layers. And what I want to do is theme out the area with how much is put into it and what types of creatures live there, that sort of thing. So that will be coming down the pipe.
Also, you guys don't have access to the console commands. I mean, I know he likes to kind of like hide them, but you literally couldn't use them if you wanted to. Like, our console commands work pretty slow, and that's because it's going through at least 1,000 layers of authentication before it even like says, yeah, you can attempt to try to use that command now, which is why it's failing. Right.
I actually like the idea of roads giving movement speed buffs, but I am not part of that process. I am currently just building tools so that this world can be generated. Probably be more of a Blair question.
Waygate to a gambling world. If you're asking if we could do that, we have the technical ability to do pretty much anything at this point.
I think gambling really comes down to how many crits you get in combat, right? Or gambling on whether you're going to live or not? I don't know. Does the randomizer have the ability to generate clusters of similar resources, similar to the old mine, quarry, and lumber? That is also a theme question. I do want to. We do have a sort of theming system where it does cluster certain things next to each other, but it won't go. I want iron can spawn here and copper can spawn here. If you understand that, it would go more along the lines of iron and granite. It wouldn't put another metal next to each other. That is currently in the randomization system.
A couple questions here. Can flat parcels be made into a plateau by surrounding it with slope parcels? In the sense that we have the donuts, yeah, you could do that.
Yes.
As far as actually just making like one side of one parcel go, like if you had a box and you're like, oh, I want to put a bunch of slope parcels right here, it doesn't really work that way.
The stitching of the edge of the parcel would not look good. We tried it. It just doesn't work very well that way.
Okay, so you're wondering if we could be like a gambling world like the one in The Last Jedi. Yeah, but only if like we had like a main quest and it's like really important for you to fulfill, and you go and you just like totally fail at it, but it doesn't really matter because you freed the cats, right?
And I haven't seen The Last Jedi yet, so you just spoiled some of it for me. Thanks for that.
Way to go,
man.
JP.
Way to go.
Good job.
Oh man,
You ruined it for Eidson.
How many castle strongholds per map is the target? Right now, I just put in the village, the shire, and the town. That's 3. 1 fort, 2 keeps, but we can vary that as much as we want. Something new coming down the pipe, which I haven't coded yet, are being able to have a lot more takeover points or capture points.
Will NPCs be able to roam over the boundaries, or will they be tied to a diorama? So they're always tied to a diorama, no matter what. Like they've got a home point. That home point could change if we wanted to. We haven't used that in the NPC strategies. At one point, the NPCs could go anywhere. They could literally follow you across the whole world if you wanted to, and we decided that's not really where we wanted to go with it. So the technical ability for the NPC to wander anywhere across any parcel boundary, any stitch, basically exists, right? And the only reason that they're not is because we've determined that the current strategy for those NPCs is that they don't do that. But if we change our minds in the future, if you guys made a compelling case to Todd and Blair, or if one of us wanted to try that, maybe we'll do an experimental. I'm sure we'll have notorious monsters or something along those lines. And by sure, I mean that we probably could, and it's really up to Todd and Blair to kind of like figure that out. But there's nothing limiting us from being able to do that. It totally works.
The zone builder real quick.
Zone builder.
Zone builder. So the size that you're seeing, those are very close to what we want. Let's turn off maximize play.
Okay. Game maximize on play.
So I'll show you a couple little things about this guy real quick. Room gates will be randomly placed, not hand placed, that I know of. They do want me to code that. Can we get a frozen world that leaves red streets?
They're still talking about Last Jedi stuff.
Oh, okay.
This is
okay.
my life.
Yeah, exactly, Blazin. That's exactly how big it can be. Yeah.
Yeah. So, on the left side over here, under Don't Destroy, Unload, let's go ahead and bring down that. And, oh wait, where is it? Where's our stuff?
Just because I don't have a map loaded?
No. I'm looking for the UI.
View?
No, not the camera. I wanted to show off the tool real quick. Try
Which part?
Under game management. Maybe game manager. Okay, I don't know where it's at. Okay, EK developer. That's it. Now EK parcel loader. Just click on that guy and go down to the bottom. All right, bring up that curve and take the left handle and drag that handle down. All right, now randomize the world. This basically is telling me what the shape of the world should be. And you'll notice that by just quickly changing the curve, we came in with a very small world. And if we change that slightly more,
down or
just up a little bit, just up, yeah, just barely a little bit more, it will bring in a different shape. And I can adjust and stare at these numbers all day and try to generate worlds off of that, and you will get all sorts of really neat stuff that comes in. So you can tell this is a much smaller world than what we were generating earlier, but it still has a really interesting shape to it. What I was trying to go for was a target of about 800 cells. That way we would have plenty of play area, be able to fit in mountains. You'll notice there's no mountains in this map, or there's only one, because there's just not enough space. And it's generated off of those settings. So we
one
could,
lonely mountain here.
Yeah, one lonely mountain.
Some roads generated.
It depends on how what Todd wants, right? So we could have a variety of land masses of where you go out through the zone or through the world, and you'll be able to gate in, and it'll be a smaller map, but possibly with a higher rank value. These maps automatically generate ranks across them, with the outer edges being lower than the central area where a lot of the combat we expect is going to occur. The keeps and forts also have higher ranks, as well as all the adventure zones. And they also inherit from where they're placed at. So if a keep is on the edge of a world, it'll be a lower rank than it would be in the center of a world.
There are already tons of Easter eggs. You can go find Todd's dragon hidden throughout the world.
I love that dragon.
I don't know if you guys have seen Todd's dragon, but it's the best dragon ever made.
Literally the best.
Now, you guys want to see like basically what the base map is. And honestly, I'll tell you that the Aranth mainland that we were kind of showing off earlier, while not literally at the 1600 cell maximum, which is also just kind of like a sparse limitation. We could probably increase that if we wanted to. It's just where our system's kind of like targeted towards. We were trying to get up to this point for a long time. We were having trouble running, those 300, 400 cell maps, and now we're up to over 1,200 cells here that we're getting working. Let me show you kind of like where the edges are over here.
You guys are 10 minutes over, just FYI.
Okay, that's fine. We don't want to do any work anyway.
You guys just keep asking us questions, and we're gonna get the day
play
off.
hooky all day.
You guys know I can just turn the stream off, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, Jack is threatening us, guys. Don't let him get away with that. We're trying to spread information and more secrets to you guys.
I gotta go to lunch.
Jack doesn't want us.
Yeah, I need to go to lunch too.
Yeah. Okay. We're gonna take like 3 more questions, and then we're done.
All the pink nodes out there are hunger, by the way.
Yeah, these are all hunger nodes. They're not all spawned at the same time. We're just with our day and night weather, blah, blah, blah system. You'll hear more about that later, I'm sure. But you can see that it's not really going all... It's almost all the way to the edges at a lot of points here, guys. And this cell map, I believe, was... What was it? Like 1,256 cells out of a possible 1,600. Which we could do the possible 1,600, but then it's just going to be a square, right? So... I mean, this is really kind of the size of a map that you're looking at to get and still have kind of edges that don't look just like a block, right? I don't think we'll ever quite get up to the, like 1,500 ranges of things. It just starts to all look very similar at that point. You should get everyone lunch so they can continue to stream at Jack. Lunch on Jack today.
Good luck with that.
Go ahead and click on the key.
Right?
Click on the key.
Keep.
Yeah. All right, the rank is on the right over here. Its current parcel rank is 5. So that's because it's on the edge. It would be higher if it was a little bit closer towards the middle.
I guess we can show them the show parcel rank stuff, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. There's our some of the icons here are broken on the 3x3s because I didn't put in some of the data it needs to highlight. But this is a heat map that shows, hey, some of these parcels have a slightly higher rank than the others do.
As it goes from the cooler to warmer colors, that's the higher ranks.
Yeah.
We can insert ranks at whatever point we'd like. Blah blah blah. I think we owe you 2 more questions.
You can walk off the edge, and you can die by walking off the edge.
Dang, I think he just got both of them at the same time, guys. Thanks for joining us. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was insightful. If you have any questions, shoot it up on the forum. We'll see if we can get the time to get over there. But mostly we're heads down trying to get it to where we can generate tens, hundreds, thousands of worlds for you guys that are all unique and variable and are going to be, I think, something that hasn't quite been seen in an MMO yet. And that's the cool thing about working here with Todd and Blair and Gordon and the whole rest of the team is they want this to be a great game. They've wanted a great game just as much as you guys have, and we're just doing our best to try to get things going that way. Yeah, no problem. You guys have a good one.
Yeah, thank you.